for those who don't know, my name is Brett Johnson. The United States Secret Service called me the original internet godfather. Now, how do you get a title like that? Well, I got it because I pled guilty finally to 39 felonies. I was placed on the United States Most Wanted list. I escaped from prison. And if that weren't enough, I also built and ran the first organized cybercrime community. It was called Shadow Crew. It's a precursor of today's darknet and darknet markets. It laid the foundation for the way modern financial cybercrime works today. If you're wondering, hey, where did all this crap start? You're looking at it. There's nothing to be proud of. And it does, oh, believe you me, it does get one sent to prison, deservedly so. Now, they were talking just a second ago about me stealing $160,000 a week. I'm responsible for a lot of different types of cybercrime. And one of the big ones that I was responsible for is tax return identity theft. So basically, when I was committing it, you would use dead people's identities and you would file taxes in their name. As that progressed and evolved, you got to where you would just simply steal people's W-2s and file taxes before they were able to. So if you're wondering why your tax returns are delayed every single year, you're looking at the SOB once again. And my sincere apologies. Truly, I laugh about it, but yeah, I'm sorry.
That right there is a hell of an intro. Welcome to Mind Split, ladies and gentlemen, where this week's guest, we have none other than Mr. Brett Johnson. And he, like he said, is the godfather of cyber criminals. And thank you so much for joining the show this week. And many of our guests might wonder, why is Brett on the show, right? And Brett, we kind of talked about it off air a little bit. The life that you lived, right? Your previous life.
Right.
That has to come with a lot of anxiety, a lot of stress, a lot of looking over your shoulder all the time. Like, how did you deal with that? How did you cope? How did you, were there exercises that you did? Like, did you play tennis to deal with the stress? Like, what did you do?
Well, unfortunately, I had not found drugs and alcohol at that point in time, so I did not self-medicate. But, you know, it's really interesting that this is a mental health podcast that you guys are doing. I've turned my life around now. I was given the opportunity to do that through my sister, my wife, and then finally the FBI. I'm widely respected in the cybersecurity identity theft fields on both sides. Unfortunately, on the bad side too. But when I was committing crime, and I talk about this a lot these days, I was fortunate when I went through prison. I had cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT. It teaches you that your thoughts determine your feelings determine your actions. If you can change the thought process, the actions change at the end of the line. And that helped me to no end, that and accepting responsibility and accountability. When I was committing crime, it's really interesting. There's a guy named Creasy. Back in the 1950s, he makes this thing called the fraud triangle. And he says in order for insiders to commit fraud, three things have to happen. You have to have pressure on that individual. You have to be able to commit the crime, the opportunity. And then finally, you have to justify that crime. So with me, there was a lot of justification, a lot of that. I was the guy who said that, hey, I did it for my sister. I did it for my wife, for my family, for my stripper girlfriend. And I believed those justifications. I had this saying that I would tell people that, hey, you meet me online, I'm a really bad guy, but in the real world, I'm a good guy. And I would, I'd give money to charities to try to convince myself I was this good person.
Kind of like a little Robin Hood.
Yeah, you see that a lot in a lot of gangster films. You know, Frank Lucas in American Gangster, he always gave to the neighborhoods. John Gotti was a almost a messiah in the neighborhood that he lived in. So you see this all the time, this kind of justification of doing things to convince yourself, and I'm no different, to convince yourself that at the end of the day, you're a good person. This is business, and this is my personal life. So I was all about compartmentalizing everything that went on. You talk about pressure and stress and things like that. You have to understand that I was on top of the food chain at that point. I was the guy who built the backbone of the way that cybercrime operates. So I was top of the pile. And when you're like that, I was constantly stressed, had a lot of anxiety. I knew I would keep the front blinds pulled in the house so that no one could see in. If a law enforcement vehicle pulled into the area, I was on point, knew exactly where they were, knew how long they were going to be staying. I mean, just always there. I was always listening for knocks at the door. If I was driving and a cop car pulled in behind me just down the street someplace, I knew it, and I was always nervous and trying to get out of their way. It's hard to put into words the amount of stress and anxiety that a criminal, talking me here or any other criminal, goes through. We got to the point, and so I started my life of crime when I was 10.
And I want to get into that because but go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I do want to get into the way you grew up, right? Because for those of you who don't know, Brett is featured in a Netflix show, and he's got 2 episodes, and the titled Stingray, correct?
It's Web of Make Believe.
Yep.
Episodes 5 and 6 about the Stingray device is what it is.
Yes, and so you're featured in episode 5 and 6, and it kind of tells your story along with another gentleman and how y'all were connected. But I just wanted to give that to the audience and let them know that if they want to kind of further explore your story, then they can go to this Netflix show. So go ahead. You were mentioning, you were about to talk about your early childhood and how you grew up.
Yeah, it's and the interesting thing on my show that I'm doing, I'm transitioning to talking to former felons right now. And one of the things that I've heard from most of the people that I've talked to, my situation is not unique. A lot of those other individuals began their life of crime at a very early age. For me, it was 10 years old. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. Eastern Kentucky, if you've never been, right in the heart of the Appalachians in coal country. It's one of these areas that if you're lucky enough to have a job, you're very lucky. If not, a lot of people engage in scams, frauds, hustles, things like whatever they can do to make ends meet. My mom was a fraudster. She was basically like the captain of the entire industry in that area for fraud. And, nothing too big or too small for her. She steals a 118,000-pound Caterpillar D9 bulldozer. She takes a slip and fall in a convenience store. We had a neighbor she acted as a pimp for. Used to stand at the corner. You see those people with buckets beside the road, collecting money. I remember many a day I would stand beside the road, homeless shelter, abused women's shelter, whatever, with a bucket asking for donations, and you tally it up at the end of the day and see how much everybody's got, and you split it up. That was my life. My crimes began at 10. My mom leaves my dad. My dad's been living with me for the past year, and I always painted my dad as a good guy. I said that he was always a good man. He just loved my mom so much that he put up with the abuse and the criminal behavior and all that. And now that my dad's been living with me, I've come to the conclusion that my dad was just a guy who didn't care. And that's a hard pill to swallow, guys. It is. It's a hard pill to swallow.
I mean, for so many years, you had this idea or this, of how your dad was, and now at like older in life, and now you're coming to the realization it wasn't really the way you kind of.
Well, I was talking about that with my wife, and I really think that what was going on, I only really I got out of prison when I was 41, and I really started reflecting on my life a couple 3 years after that. So I'm 53 right now, and I'm constantly thinking about who I am, why I do the things I do, things like that. And I really think that the reason that I painted my father as that good guy is that I really needed that at that point in time.
You were holding on to that. Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
In order to process all this other stuff that was going on. So this mental health stuff, right? But my mom leaves my dad. She used to bring men home in front of him, partying, leave for days, tell him she was going to leave, whatever. But she leaves my dad, takes me and my sister from Panama City back to Hazard, Kentucky. And she keeps up those partying ways. And this is a woman, this is a woman who, she'd leave me and my sister at home for days at a time. I mean, days, and be partying with her friends and all that. Sometimes she'd take me and my sister with her. She'd leave us in a car, or we'd wait in the living room as she went, adjourn to the bedroom, what have you. Most of the time we just stayed at home. And this, you got to realize when I talk about this, it feels to me like I'm minimizing, but this is a woman who would almost constantly tell us that she had given up her life for us, that she was going to leave and never come back, that we were going to find her dead in a ditch someplace, just bam, bam, bam. And when you're a child, as an adult, you can filter that out. When somebody's just full of crap. As a child, you don't.
Yeah, that's your mom. Your mom is
mom.
telling you this. Yeah.
That had to have been a difficult thing to even hear.
Yeah. So I'm 10 years old, mom's gone. I'm the kid that posts up at the window, see if she's, coming home.
Like looking through the blinds. Yeah.
Sometimes exactly. I'm, walking out in the street, see if she's driving home. That's me at 10. My sister Denise is 9. She's not like that. Denise is a child who's just pissed off all the time.
Okay.
And so mom, where my crimes begin, mom had been gone for a few days and we didn't have any food in the house.
Yeah. It was like, when you feel like you were trapped in a corner, you were back in the corner, you needed to feed yourself,
started out of
necessity. Denise.
Yeah. So what happens is Denise comes in with a pack of pork chops and I'm like, where'd you get that? She's like, I stole it. And so we start shoplifting food, and that turns into shoplifting, games and jewelry and toys and all that. Cause hell, you're 10 and 9, you're going to get some toys. But mom comes home, sees everything we've stolen, asks where it came from. I tell her we found it. She's like, no, you didn't find that. Denise says we stole it. My mom looks at my sister, show me how you did that, and joins us.
Wow.
Not only does she join us, she goes to get her mother to join us as well. And
so y'all got like a little crime syndicate in the family, right?
Yeah, a little intergenerational shoplifting ring. Yeah.
Have you ever seen that show Animal Kingdom on TNT?
I've not. I know what it is, but I've never seen it.
Yeah, it is really awesome. Good. And we'll talk about it off air, but I don't I don't want to waste it. But similar to that, it was, it's kind of like a crime family,
right?
That sort of thing. So
that's where my life of crime begins. And I want your listeners to understand, I'm not blaming, and I'm big about this, I'm not blaming my life, the way my parents raised me, for my decisions and choices as an adult. When you're a child, you can't help what the adults in your circle are doing. You're going to do that. But when I became an adult, I had the choice to either go down that life of crime or do the right damn thing. And I chose the life of crime. My sister had the exact same upbringing. She goes off to be a teacher, great parent, citizen.
Yeah. And you mentioned that in the show. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think was that? I mean, 2 kids in the same environment, right? You and your sister. Your sister chose to be a teacher and go down the path of, normalcy, I guess, let's call it, right? You, on the other hand, you chose to continue your career.
Yeah.
What do you think was that? Because it's same environment. What do you think that trigger was, where it was like for you to justify it was okay, and for Denise to say, "Hey, I'm done. I'm gonna do the right thing."
I've actually thought about that, and there was I've done a few podcasts now, other than the new one I've got. I did this one called Anglerfish, where I actually bring Denise in, and she sits down and talks with me about her, her childhood with us. And at one point during that podcast, she says that she always thought that someone was going to come and save us. And I just, bam, right there. I'm like, well, I knew no one ever would.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that right there sets the tone for everything. Denise was, Denise always wanted someone to come and save us. And because of that, she grows up to be a good citizen, but she's got a lot of anger issues.
Okay.
Me, I knew no one was ever going to save us. So by God, if it's going to get done, you got to do it yourself. And I don't have a lot of anger issues. I joke about everything. I mean, I'm this guy that will laugh about just about anything because it's better to laugh than cry, honestly. But I think that sets the path of the way that Denise went and the way that I went. Now, that being said, you got to understand too, and Bryan Cranston says this in Breaking Bad, I was damn good at it.
Mm-hmm.
So I took to it like a fish to water.
Yeah.
So, well, that had to be a driving factor in you continuing on. It's just, mentally you were like, hey, I'm good at this shit. Let's keep going.
Yeah, it's definitely a driving factor. My sister actually told me a couple of years ago, once I turned my life around, and I'm still turning my life around, but once I became this guy on the cybersecurity side, she was like, you just don't do anything half-assed. You were top of the heap on the crime side, and now you're this guy on the good guy side, and that's there's a lot of truth to that. I don't settle for anything. I always strive to do the best of whatever I'm doing.
Wow.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So and I know we kind of went over this, but I wanted to ask this specific question. Did your mom joining you guys in the stealing spree, or even having her prior to you stealing, seeing her doing the stealing, living the crime life, did that in your head justify that it's okay at a young age?
Dude, I didn't, I mean, my life, we're doing a book on it, but I didn't meet my first decent person until I was 16. Okay.
Wow.
When I say that, it wasn't just my mom who was involved in criminal activity. Every single person on that side of the family was involved in something. All right. My aunt was the person who was always trying to defraud disability claims and insurance fraud and everything else. My grandfather, he used to sit on the downstairs porch. People would walk up to him with stolen VCRs, radios, watches, what have you, and they would start telling him, now, Paul, this is where this came from. And he would stop him right there. Son, I ain't the FBI. I don't care where it came from. What do you want for it? And that was the type of environment that I grew up in. And you got to understand there's a lot of abuse in that environment, a lot of abuse. My mom was, she could be physical, but it was emotional, verbal, mental, the negligence of everything. I get to the point, I don't know if you guys have listened to this or not, but I get to the point when we were in Florida still with my dad, that my mom and dad would leave the house and I would urinate on the carpet. And I didn't talk about that until I was, I don't know, 47, 48 years old. And I talked about it in a presentation. I do public speaking now. Talked about it in a presentation. This woman comes up to me after the presentation. She was like, Brett, before I did this job I'm doing now, I used to work with abused children. And what you did is normal, because you get to the point that that's the only form of control that you have left. And so that was one of the things that happened when I'm 15. I beat up a woman in an elevator. My mom had left my dad. I got a call from my dad that I was always under the impression that I was going to go live with him. I guess I was looking to be saved too at one point. And I get the call that he's getting married. I didn't even know he had a girlfriend. I get the call that he's getting married, and no, I ain't going anyplace. And I guess I just snapped. And
he wasn't living in the same town as you now. He left the house and he used Florida.
Yeah, my mom had left him. We were living in Panama City, Florida. My mom had left him, and me and Denise and mom, we were in Hazard, Kentucky. My dad stayed in Panama City. And the way we got to Panama City, my dad, I don't know if you guys had seen this, my dad was watching 60 Minutes one night, and they were doing this segment on the drug trade in Miami. And they were showing the tables of cash, the pallets of Coke, and everything else. And he's sitting there just locked into that show. After the 20-minute segment's over, he looks over at my mom. He's like, I think I need to go and be a cop in Miami. And she was like, that's a really good idea. And the plan was for him to become a cop, happen upon a drug deal. He'd let them keep the drugs. He'd take the cash, and everything would be just fine.
Mm-hmm.
That did not go too well. They got to Miami. There were some riots going on in Miami when they got there. Scared my mom to death. About the next day, my dad goes to cop class, comes back. Everything's going to be just fine. The day after that, my dad goes to cop class, comes back. We are not staying. And what had happened was Miami-Dade police had burst in, arrested like 6 people that had outstanding warrants that had the exact same plan that he had. And he was like, probably a bad idea. So they were almost broke by that point. They get in the U-Haul they had rented, start heading north on I-75. No idea where they were going until they remember that they both at once upon a time had went to spring break in Panama City, Florida.
Wow.
And that's how we ended up there.
Wow.
Yeah. So not much of, planning going on in that.
Yeah, it was just kind of fly by the seat, kind of like,
yeah.
Fly by night, definitely.
Yeah.
So, I know we're kind of jumping all over the places,
Sure.
but I wanted to jump back into what we saw in the web of make believe.
Okay.
The first time you went to the Kinko's, the first time you went to Kinko's, what was going through your head when you were trying to get that money the first time?
Are we talking about the Beanie Baby thing?
Yeah, the Beanie Baby. I'm sorry. Yes, Beanie Baby.
So the thing was I had scared to death. The thing is when for those who have not committed crime, it's a lot of trial and error a lot of the time. There's a difference between reading about something and doing it. Okay, so you can read about all these crimes that are committed, but until you actually put hands to the or feet to the pavement and actually go about committing it, it's a different animal altogether. So I was defrauding this lady for a Beanie Baby. For those who don't know and haven't watched the show, my first online crime was selling a counterfeit. Well, I say a counterfeit. Was selling a Beanie Baby on eBay. I was watching Inside Edition one night. They were profiling this thing called Peanut, the Royal Blue Elephant, selling for $1,500. I was sitting there going, I need me a peanut.
Made out of polyester, right?
Yeah, exactly. So it was a blue elephant, and I couldn't find the damn thing at any of the shops. Took me about 3 hours to figure out, idiot, he's not in the shops. He's on eBay for $1,500.
Yeah, exactly.
But they had these little gray ones, $8. So I'm like, grab one for $8. Stop by Kroger on the way home, pick up a pack of blue RIT dye, go home, try to dye the little guy. Turns out they're made out of polyester. Like you said, they don't hold dye very well. Look like they've got the mange when you get them out of the bath. And I found a picture of a real one, posted it. This lady thought I had the real thing, and she wins the bid for $1,500. And what happens is I was not very well schooled in online fraud. No one was at that point in time. So I did this under my own name. I sent her the animal in my name. And I told her first, I was like, hey, man, congratulations on the bid. We've never done any business before. I'm not sure if I can even trust you. What I need you to do is send me a couple of money orders for $1,500. I get those, I'll send you your animal. And she believed that. So she sends them to me. I cash out the money orders, send her the animal in the mail because I figured, hell, you got to send them something. She gets it, sees that, hey, this is not what I ordered, gives me a call, very irate. And basically, hey, this is not what I bought. And my response, because I was an asshole. My response was, lady, you ordered a blue elephant. I sent you a blue-ish elephant. And now that was me with that bravado, but the actual thought process and the feelings and everything else, I was absolutely scared to death, wondering if she was going to call the police, wondering what was going to go on, who was going to come and get me. I got more aware of the things that were going on in the neighborhood, knocks at the door, everything else like that. I mean, the stress level and the anxiety, even though I profited $1,500, was through the roof because I hadn't done anything like that before. Now, the secret to criminal activity is the more you do it, the calmer you get because you start to understand the dynamics of what's going on.
Well, right? That was my next question is how long did it take for that paranoia to start to subside and you were just like, this is it, I'm good?
Does it
Was it
come
weeks
back
or
with
months?
every new kind of hustle? Like, yeah,
It
okay,
does.
I've done the Beanie Baby thing and I'm cool
Right.
with that. Now I'm gonna go into this IRS, tax thing, and then now that's a whole nother set of anxiety until I do that enough.
Right.
Like,
So what you see is being a criminal, you develop a skill set, all right? And that skill set does translate to other types of crime, okay? So, when you're doing like I was selling items that didn't exist on eBay, that translates very well over to credit card schemes where you have to run drop addresses, things like that. So the skill set in something will help you transfer to another
Into
type of
another
criminal activity. All
Mhm.
right. And that tends to be the way it is still today. Now, that being said, so I was doing eBay fraud and was stealing a decent amount of money. eBay fraud turns into selling counterfeit software, pirated software, and also programming satellite DSS cards. So those 18-inch RCA satellite systems, you can program the access card, turn on all the channels.
I had one
Started
of those
doing
growing up.
that. Yeah, and I'm the guy that ripped everyone off on that. So when you first start that and you start stealing people's money, there's a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety because again, you're not aware of any potential repercussions that could come. Are these you've not learned yet? And here's one of the big secrets. One of the first lessons on that most cyber criminals learn is that if you delay that victim long enough, a lot of them, they get exasperated. They give up. They throw their hands in the air. They walk away, and you don't hear from them again.
Yeah.
All right, you just wear them down. And very few, and that's one of the big things today. And it was back then. Very few victims ever report those crimes to law enforcement. They just kind of eat it. All right. Now, before you learn that, the stress and anxiety through the roof. Once you learn that, it calms down, all right, until you transfer to a new crime. So I was doing this eBay fraud, bank scams, stuff like that. And we partnered with some Ukrainians, and they're the ones that were responsible for credit card theft as we know it today. All right, a guy named Dmitry Golubov. He's on parliament in the Ukraine right now. But he's the guy that's responsible for modern credit card theft as we know it. When he comes over, none of us except the Ukrainians had ever really dealt with credit card fraud. So getting started in that brings a whole new set or a whole new level of anxiety and stress and everything else. But again, the more you do it, you get to where you level out. Now the secret to all this is, and this is one of the things that not only myself, but I served 7.5 years in prison. And I saw this with most criminals that were in prison as well. With Shadow Crew, we get to the point where we know that we're being investigated. We had actually intercepted text messages of the United States Secret Service investigating us, okay? So we knew we were on the hook. But what happens is you adopt this philosophy or this idea of fatalism. Whatever's going to happen is going to happen. Wow. And that allows you to continue committing the crimes without having to stress out and have the anxiety and the fear that would maybe prohibit that criminal activity. All right. So fatalism is very common with bank robbers, with drug dealers, with credit card thieves, or, hackers like I am, anything like that. And it's a very common trait that you see among criminals.
Speaking of, and I'm curious to ask this question. You kind of mentioned Shadow Crew, and in the special, it kind of goes deeper into it. But is there an honor amongst thieves? I mean, how, like, if you can, you are now putting together a crew, so to speak, right? And you're getting information from everybody and helping you help Daniel and so forth, right?
Right.
If no one in the world can trust these guys, right? What makes you feel that you can trust them? Again, is it honor amongst thieves?
That's a good question. And yes, to a point, with some exceptions. You have to understand that people act in their own self-interest. As long as you understand that, you can develop trust with individuals and have that honor among those individuals. Now, here's what I mean by that. And I used to teach this on Shadow Crew as well. Someone who is selling illegal goods and services will continue to sell those goods and services as long as it's in their best interest to do so. So what does that mean? Well, it means as long as they've got a steady supply of that product or service, because they know they can continue to make money. They're going to try to keep their name top notch, as long as they are not arrested or under investigation, causing them to shut up shop. So as long as it's in their best interest, yes, they will continue to do that. So what we did with Shadow Crew, I'm the guy that invents this trust mechanism. So you figure you're dealing with criminals. All of us were criminals. You're dealing with criminals where you don't know what each other look like. You don't know each other's real names. You'll never meet each other in real life. So for cybercrime to succeed, three things have to take place. You have to gather data, you have to commit a crime, and then finally you have to cash that crime out. You have to put cash in pocket. Those three necessities have to work in conjunction. The problem is that a single attacker, one criminal, can't do all three things. He can do one, sometimes two.
And you go into that.
Okay, so you have to network with people, and for you to network, you have to trust those people. So how do you develop trust in a criminal environment? And the way we did that is when Shadow Crew, it almost mirrors what happens with the Italian mafia. The way we did it with Shadow Crew is first you have a communication channel, that forum type structure where you can look at individuals and conversations days, weeks, months old. We had vouching systems in place, review systems, escrow systems in place, all with that purpose of establishing trust with one criminal and another. Now, when I say vouch, what that means is if I say this guy is good, I take responsibility for that guy.
Yeah.
If he rips somebody off, you don't go to him. You come to me, and I make things right. Okay, and that made all the difference in the world at that point in time. And that's still the type of trust mechanism that is used today in criminal environments online.
Now, I could sit here and talk to you all day about this, like I mentioned off air, right? But when you got popped,
right,
and then you were working again, you can watch kind of the story unfold on the Netflix special. But when you got popped and you were working for the IRS,
Secret Service,
you were in that room and they were over your shoulder,
right,
and you were trying to catfish, kind of catch them. It eventually had to get out that you were kind of, that you were on the other side now, right? And so does that take a hit for like your street cred, like now amongst the other criminals, where they're like, no, we can't touch Brett now, or
you're labeled a narc or something?
So that's one of the things that if it were in drugs, if it were in smuggling, if it were anything other than online crime, you take a hit. The interesting thing is that in criminal environments, like I'm on Telegram all the time, on Dread, on the dark web, things like that. Everyone knows, and I'm there under my name. So everyone knows who I am. And typically they're okay with it because they have this sense that, hey, this guy's been when we are. He's not on here judging us. He's just, looking at stuff like we are. He's just Brett. We know where he's from. We know what he's done. And I talk to him about quitting sometimes, and they typically tell me, hey, no way I'm quitting. I make too much money doing this stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I get it. But a lot of those guys also think, they see what I've done with my life. There's this thing in cybersecurity that if you want to go to the top of cybersecurity, serve a few years in prison and you'll get out and speak. And a lot of people believe that, even though it's not true. The truth is that, a lot of criminals think that they can get arrested, and when they get out, they can get a career as a consultant, things like that. What they don't understand is that when you get out, nobody trusts you. You're not going to get a job. You're doing anything. I mean, you can get a job if you're a former drug dealer, but if you're the guy who steals identities and hacks into systems and all that, you ain't getting a job.
And the FBI and the IRS and the CIA and everybody is not knocking on every criminal's door that just got out, so.
Right.
Yeah.
So it took me, I got out in 2011. It took me until 2017 to just get hired for one thing. Okay. So there's a lot of trust building that takes place, and you got to have people that, a lot of people think, well, I can do this. The only way you can do it is if people take a chance on you. So you have to have people that are willing to put their reputation, their livelihood on the line to give you a chance. And I'm going to tell you guys, there's not a whole lot of people out there that do that. All right. So you know, it's, and today I'm on the right side of the fence.
Yeah,
I am, but it's been one hell of a trip to do that. And
you being on the, okay, so I'm gonna set this question up.
sure,
I'm a basketball guy. I'm 6'10". I play collegiately, play professionally. I'm in the business now. I can spot talent, right? I can watch ESPN or a game
sure,
and say, hey, this kid is worthy of being in the league, right?
right.
You being on one side for many years and now being on this other side, can you spot quote unquote talent, or can you spot a scam just because of your trained eye?
Oh, you can do it every day. I consult with various law enforcement agencies on that. So we've got some arrests that are coming up later this fall that I can't talk about right now.
Of course,
arrested. But
yeah.
we've got a lot of arrests coming up later this fall from some of those guys. I'm the guy that, if you read my stuff on LinkedIn, I like to anticipate the new types of fraud that are coming on and talk about that. Make no mistake, I said this yesterday in a post. I identify as a criminal, not because I'm currently breaking the law, but because I understand that criminal culture more than not. All right. So I absolutely, the mindset fits more in the criminal culture than it does in the legal culture. You know, do I get tempted? Well, yeah, I see the money that's stolen during the pandemic, and I'm like, I could have done that.
Yeah, in his sleep, right?
Yeah, but where I fight that temptation, you know, if I see some sort of scheme like a way to get a Rolex or some crap like that, I'll typically write about it or do a podcast about it, and that will get the temptation out of my system at that point, because I've talked and I've walked through how to go about doing that. And I've warned the people that, hey, this is what's going on your system. You know, this is how easy it is to defraud this system.
Wow.
The sad thing is that a lot of, especially if you're a government sector, they don't listen. They don't care.
Yeah, there's too much red tape, too much bureaucracy. By the time it gets up to where it needs to get to, it's already happened. So is you kind of say, to get it out of your system, you would do a podcast or a show or talk about it, right? A post.
Right.
Is it similar to being like an alcoholic, where you need to have a drink, and then you need to, every day it's a struggle to fight that battle to not have that drink, right? Like, or be a gambling, a gamble. What is it called? Oh my God.
Gambler?
Yeah, just gambling. Like,
so,
if you got a problem gambling, or is it the same thing?
I think it is an addiction. Now, so my thing, and if you pay attention to what I was saying, I'm not talking about the money. I'm talking about, this is how you do it.
Yeah.
All right? This is how you get this done. So that it is an addiction. It absolutely is, because I'm good at it.
Yes.
All right. And when I was doing it, for many years, it brought thrill and enjoyment and a number of other things that were positive at that point in time, until it turned very, very negative. It gets to the point when you're committing criminal activity that it's no longer fun. You don't want to continue doing this, but you do it anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot like that. I talk on my show a lot about having that support group, that safety net of individuals, of being able to talk about things. Because being a criminal, I lived my life not talking about stuff. All right. So like during the pandemic, for example, my speaking gigs were ending because we had lockdown. There was no consulting going on, anything else like that. I called the family in the kitchen. I was like, hey, the way this story ends is with me back committing fraud and in prison for 20 years. And that was the first time I had ever verbalized that fear of committing crime. I'd usually, when I was back in the day, I'd just swallow it and, adopt this attitude of, I'm going to do what I need to do.
I got to do. Yeah. Right. I got to get those pork chops. I got to feed the fam.
Right.
Yeah.
And just by me verbalizing it, and it wasn't just to my wife and kids, it was to everyone in the industry that I talked to. It was to my friends in the FBI. It got to the point that the FBI buddies of mine, they'd call me up every couple of weeks. Hey, Brett, how you doing? You want to have lunch together? And they'd always check on me. And it's that support group. It's a lot like AA or Narcanon or what have you. That support group of just being in there and being able to talk to people, that have your back, that you can just get that out, makes all the difference in the world at the end of the day.
Wow.
It seems that, you just kind of compared it to an addiction, and it kind of, it is from start to finish. It's an addiction. You're addicted to the thrill. You're addicted to the money, the even the stress at times, the paranoia. You might be addicted to it and then getting away from it. And you even mentioned that sometimes writing it out helps you get over the wanting to phase. And that's kind of like with drug addiction. A lot of people that go through addiction for substance, they get out and they turn around and they start helping people that are in addiction. And that's their way of staying sober.
But, I understand too, man. You're right. You're right. And understand too, one of the things that, and I do liken it to an addiction. And one of the things that I'm big about saying is that someone who is addicted to someone, to something, cannot love anything or anything else but that addiction. And I fully believe that. And the reason I say that is, I was committing crime. I was engaged to this girl that I was head over heels with, and she had no idea that I was a criminal. And I put that criminal activity ahead of her every single day, every day.
Wow.
like
And
an addiction.
Yeah, it's gotta be stressful to live a double life, so to speak.
Well, it's stressful then, but the guilt now. When you look back at and that's one of the things I think too that helps keep me straight is I look back constantly. I take these long drives. Like if I've got a presentation or a gig that's within like a 7-hour drive, I'll drive it instead of fly it, and that way I can think through these processes. But I think that guilt and accepting that and knowing that, hey, you're the SOB that did that. I could have chose to have a legal life, and I could have been with that person. And just the guilt of knowing that, hey, the only thing that ruined that was me. Wow. That's the kind of stuff that I think really helps people, overcome those addictions and not slide back, things like that.
Mm-hmm. And your relationship, we've got a couple more minutes here, but the relationship with your mom, you said your dad's living with you now. How's that relationship now with your mom? Has she passed,
I don't have one. No, she is still alive. She actually called me or tried to call me about 3 months ago and left a message on my phone saying, hey, I need your help. I've not been arrested. It's nothing illegal, which automatically means that it's something illegal. And I didn't respond to it. She's like 79 now.
Okay.
And still doing this stuff. She's still very toxic. She's narcissistic. Does not accept any responsibility or accountability. Will tell you in no uncertain terms. She tried to be a good mother.
Yeah.
And
turn the blame on someone else.
Yeah, she blames it on everyone but herself. Everyone. Yeah. And I told her about about like me urinating in the floor and things like that. She called me a liar, that it never happened. Has called many times, either attacking me or leaving nasty messages on my wife's cell phone. I don't know why Brett won't talk to me anymore, stuff like that. So it's just better to avoid toxic people.
I really do appreciate you taking the time to talk about. Just briefly talk about, like, we could bring you back for 4 more episodes.
Hey, anytime.
Really dive into the story. But Brett Johnson, you are such an amazing story, and I just want to appreciate. I want to say thank you for coming on the show and lending your story to the to the podcast.
Thank you, truly, I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely, Brett. I appreciate you coming through so quickly. It took all of 20 minutes to get this put together, and you've made it so simple. I'm truly thankful that you've got on our show and talked to our listeners about this. And Matt, you weren't with us the last 2 episodes because you had a prior engagement. I just want to say I am so glad you're back.
Brett,
you have a voice for this. You have a voice for this, and,
well,
and
I
I was getting
appreciate
tired
it.
of hearing my voice.
I appreciate it. Well, Brett, plug your podcast. I know we see the sign, the Brett Johnson Show.
Well,
Plug where people can find you on LinkedIn, where they can find the podcast, like if they want to know more.
yeah, look, guys, I've been doing this podcast called The Brett Johnson Show. It's on YouTube, it's on Spotify, iTunes, wherever you get your content. I would really appreciate if you'd, tune in, see if you like it. If you do, subscribe. If you don't subscribe, hey, I'm really serious, and I mean this. I'm really serious about a few things. About knowing who I am, about treating people the way that you would like to be treated, and also about protecting people from that type of person that I used to be. So I talk a lot about scams, cybercrime. I talk about this journey I'm going through, trying to become a better person. And I'm very serious about those types of things. So, tune into the show, see what you think. If you want to contact me, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, anglerfish.com. That's ANGLERPHISH, like fishing.com. I don't charge people. I don't. Now, if you've got a company or want me to speak, I've got a fee for you. But if you, if you just want some advice or something like that, shoot me an email, make a comment on the YouTube platform or something like that, and I'll follow up with you. I promise you that. Okay, so stay safe out there, and thank you guys so much for bringing me on. I do appreciate it.
Absolutely, thank you, and we'll throw all your information right here on the screen somewhere. We'll get the editing team to put your information, your social medias on there, your emails. So if there's anything that anyone wants to ask you, they can directly contact you.
Beautiful,
awesome. Well, tune in next week, guys, for another great episode. Brett Johnson, you are the man, and we appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Like, we weren't supposed to come up with something this clean. Like, something happened.